So, welcome everybody. Let's just dive heads over in this. I'm so happy because I'm again interviewing Lee Harrington because he wrote a new book, and the book that's really I have flies here, so every now and I do this. I'm sorry for that. Anyway, he was writing a new book. It's called Become Your Own Beloved. And Lee's going to talk about what it's about. It's very, very powerful. And I think it's the basics of what you need to find out about yourself and to become fully present in a relationship. And I would love to hear from Lee what he's about. So I'm not going to do a lot of introduction, but I'm just going to ask Lee, can you just do in 1 minute a very, very quick recap of who you are and then maybe a little bit on why you wrote the book? And then we
Absolutely.
start that.
It's great to be back. I love getting to connect with you. So my name's Lee Harrington. I'm a spirituality and sexuality author based in Denver, Colorado in the United States. And for me, this journey of kink and sexuality and spirituality has been so woven together. And about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, a friend of mine told me that they got married to themselves. And I was so blown away by this concept. The idea of not necessarily putting ourselves first, but saying out loud, I want a quality relationship with me, whether that's around dominance and submission, whether that's around marriage, whether that is around being best friends. What would it be like to build a relationship with me that I value and that is unique? And so this book came out of that idea of what's it like to be our own pen pal? What's it like to take ourselves on dates? What's it like to make commitments to ourselves? And what's it like to remember that that relationship matters when you're in relationship with others? This notion that every partnership is a relationship with me, their relationship with themselves, and our relationship together. So that's what birthed this book. And it's been such a delight to connect with people about how they want to have relationships with who they are.
What does it mean to have a relationship with yourself?
So for some people, it's about having a friendship with you. For me, I realized I said things to myself I would never let another person say. Right? I've had times where I would say, "Oh, Lee, you're so stupid." But if a friend said that to me, I'd be like, "Why are you being mean to me?" And so having a relationship with me was calling myself out when I was being cruel to me, or noticing that I wasn't taking the time I needed to have downtime because I was always making time for other people. And what I need for me to succeed, to thrive, is to have a night a week where I can read a book or watch a dumb action film or take myself out to a nice movie or food and say, I matter. Like I don't have to go out. But I have a friend of mine that during the pandemic realized I have to figure out how to be a good coworker with myself because they used to have people all around them all the time. But what would it be like to say, you know what, if the thing I get out of coworkers is to be able to bounce ideas off of them. How do I do that for me?
Hmm.
And might be finding other people online. That might be and have a thing open so you can talk to each other through the day. Or maybe that's saying, you know what, I need to dream up ideas and then set them over here and take a lunch break. Instead of trying to do it all at once, what would it be like to then come back to an idea rather than being frustrated at me that I'm not good at doing things alone. So to me, that's kind of self-relationship. It's figuring out how how you can delight and how you can succeed in being you.
Why would someone need that?
If I take it to submission and kink,
Mm-hmm.
I, for myself, having been a service person, having and still occasionally being a submissive, having lived as a slave over the years, knowing my relationship to me helped me figure out what I can actually offer. Because I would say things like, "Of course, ma'am, of course, master, I can do that for you," without checking in with me and saying, "Is that what you can honestly do?" And developing a relationship with me let me actually succeed in service because I could check in and say, "Actually, you don't have 20 hours to offer in service this week. The reality of what you have is that you can do physical service, but my body can't actually do 10 hours of physical service." And having a relationship with me is the capacity to check in with me. Because, at least in my experience, I was listening to what they wanted rather than and wanting to say yes no matter what, out of love and desire and hope and need, instead of really listening. Because if I didn't listen to me, I actually couldn't serve them.
Right. So what you're
And
saying is
yeah,
it's a process of radical honesty toward yourself, to get to know yourself
yes,
and to find out
yes,
who you are and what you want instead of. I was a bit confused because what you said is like, you said that voice in your head that says you're so stupid. I tend to think that that's not me. I call her
mm,
Tontarina. I mean, it's I give her a name because that's usually it's the name of other people around you. Because it's if you peel it off, it's more often the voice of your mom or your
yes,
mother-in-law or your dad or your best friend or even your partner that's saying that, and it's not you. So that's
right.
why, and but it's what you think they say, huh? So there is a difference. So I was a bit looking like, what's the um who is the me that I'm gonna love? Because in a way, especially what you said, like you're getting married, so it's like two people are you're so it's not like you're looking from a distance toward yourself, but it's really going inside and finding out who you are and what you really want.
Right. So, what you're talking about, I would consider the 201 part of this conversation. For a
Okay.
lot of people I know, including myself, making it external and saying, "Who is this person here and who is this person here?" Let me tease out the knowledge that you're talking about. Because saying radical honesty and know yourself, and that voice is, your grandmother or your uncle, a lot of people haven't done that work.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds easy, but my hope was to say, well, what if instead of looking in yourself and finding that, because a lot of people don't know how to separate those,
Yeah.
and instead taking a moment to look here and go, "Oh, I love you, but not all of you is me."
Wait.
What if I look at this and realize, "Oh shit, that's actually the stuff my first mistress said to me."
Right.
Right? That's the stuff that some person on the internet said that's what a real submissive
Yeah.
should
It's,
do.
it's not even relevant who said it. It's just that it's not you.
Exactly.
Actually,
And
what you're doing is you're actually checking assumptions or you're checking beliefs. So what you do is there's something, you find something that you believe is right. So in a way, what you're doing is what you're saying is what you do is what you said, like, you're stupid. So in a way, what you're doing is just doing a truth process on it. So you're asking yourself, why? Why am I stupid? Is it true? And so you
right,
peel it off until you find out what's beneath this. And that's what is you.
right. And to take the time to do that,
Yeah.
gentleness with honesty. And I especially find that male submissives aren't given the permission to do this
Mm,
because that voice from your grandfather, that voice from your football coach, that voice
boys don't
from
cry. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
boys don't cry, etc. And then where
For
is the
sure, not
space?
submissive.
Right.
Yeah,
And suddenly now being a sissy is seen as weak
yeah.
instead of going, oh, I'm taking on the power of femininity. I'm taking on the power of my own gentleness. I am taking on the power of service and submission.
Hmm.
Because otherwise, what I hear is that sissy, at least for me in grade 4, grade 5, I would hear people say to other men, oh, you're just a sissy.
Yeah, that
And
means
it
like
was a
you're weak,
bad
you're
word.
lame, or yeah, true. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's your
And then,
coward mainly. Yeah.
right. Instead of saying sissy in the kink community being a bad thing, no, it's that sissy is delighting in the joy coming from your partner
Yeah.
who is saying, you are beautiful, you are powerful, you taking on these tropes is not it, because otherwise it makes it sound like women are bad.
True.
And I think for
But
me,
in a
part of
way,
this,
it's anyway.
yeah,
I mean, a word is a word, and we are having so much. Sometimes I'm doing my vanilla life. I'm a trainer too, and I give them. Sometimes I try to explain to them how much power there can be in one word. So I asked them to do just all draw a dog. And then I get like so many different dogs. And I said, like, if you want to figure out what to feed the dog, and you don't first of all decide what is the dog for you together, that you understand. So actually what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, is what you're doing for yourself is finding out, what do I mean with this, what I say, and what does it mean for me? I'm doing a lot with discus communication styles, and one of the styles is dominance. In
mm-hmm,
Holland, dominance is not something very positive. If people are called dominant here in Holland, it means that like you're aggressive, sometimes arrogant, you're taking over conversations. It's not something that people are proud of to be called dominant.
right,
You're dominant. That's also not a very nice word. But it's all about what it means, because in the kink community, dominance is something to strive for, right? So, but it also mixes up. So in a way, if I understand you correctly, it's the whole book is about finding out who you are and actually getting into peace with your own truth and finding out
absolutely,
who is really you. So how, because we're all labels, huh? We have a
mm,
label. You're an educator, you're a lover, you're a son, I'm a mom, I'm a teacher. There's many things that I am. If you peel off all these layers, what's underneath? What's there?
and I think from my perspective, woven into this is which are the labels you've claimed that bring you joy, that are part of who you want to be or who you are, and which labels are ones that someone else put on you.
Mm-hmm.
I think of a person who's very dear to me, and they said as soon as they gave birth to their child, mother was put on them, and
Uh-huh.
they lost their name from so many, like at the PTA, at the, school meetings.
Yeah.
You are the
Yeah,
child of
it's true.
so and so. You're the parent.
I'm the mother of. Yeah, that's true. Oh, I didn't realize that, but that's also a label. Yeah.
Yeah. And for some people, it's like, no, I choose mother as a label. But
Mhm.
in other situations, it's your mother of so and so. You've lost your other identities. These
Mm.
other labels have been set to the side by this whole population who have
But the
labeled you
question
something else.
is this your identity?
Right. And if we think of submission, especially if we think of possession, people for whom they are so and so submissive.
Mm-hmm.
I am owned by. In the case of my own relationships, I am the daddy of my boy, right? We have a daddy boy relationship, not in an age play sense, but in a learning and growing and possession
Yeah.
sense. And for us, it's, is my boy Lee's boy? Are they a boy who happens to be in relationship with this daddy, and figuring out which is core to themselves and which is the relationship?
Right. So
Because I know people,
can you give
yeah.
a practical example of how would that look like in real life?
Mm, yeah. An example might be, if I look into myself, do I use the word for describing me? Like, for example, I used the word educator. It's a word I describe me with.
Mm-hmm.
And part of my identity as a kinky person is that I give and I do service. Those are activities, but they're also core to the sense of self. What relationship I'm in is something I cherish, is something I
Choose for it,
love,
and you choose for it.
and I choose
Yeah.
it, which means, like, I was in a, a service relationship to my ma'am for a couple of years. And when we ended our relationship, my heart was aching and my stomach churned and I felt sick.
Did you
And
feel
after,
like you were losing your identity?
exactly. But then I took a moment, a couple weeks later, in all honesty,
Uh-huh, of course. Yeah.
I took a moment and went, was my or is my relationship to her who I am? Or is it what pieces of that are called I am? And I realized the I am is service person. What this was a chance for me to give service,
You too. Yeah.
was
Right.
a chance for me to love.
Mm.
And I still cherish that relationship. Even if it's over, I still love them. But who I am is not this.
Right. So in a way, what you're saying is what your book is about is it's a journey of exploration um, on who you are, what you
Mhm.
want, what you choose for. So that will give you a lot of insight, which you can use when you go into a relationship. Would that be
And
a good way
oh, go ahead.
to approach it? Yeah, because I
Yeah.
was looking for, because I think that this is very valuable, even also not just when you're alone, especially not when you're alone.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
what happens a lot is in relationship, especially what I see a lot with submissives, is they're following along with what their dominant is I mean, they're guiding them and they're putting a path, but it's sometimes for them it's really hard to find out what they really want. And I think
Right.
it's so powerful and to find out who you are. And
Yes.
because then you also know what you bring into a relationship.
Right. And the book is written from a vanilla perspective, though one of the chapters kind of it lays out polyamory as a theory, but it doesn't call it polyamory. So if there's that chapter, if you ever want to explain polyamory, just hand them that chapter. Um, but it's a vanilla book because I wanted it to be accessible to a really broad audience. And so it's something to consider, especially for those of you who are leaders in a relationship, right? You're the leader, or you identify as dominant, or you identify as possessor, whatever word you use. Using this as an exercise for your possession, for the person you are leading, for your submissive. Again, whatever term you use, giving that as an exercise to them is a chance for them to then tell you how they actually operate,
Yeah.
how they actually thrive. Because as somebody who has also been gifted with the chance to be a master, to be a daddy over the past 25 years, being given that gift, when I have someone say to me, Daddy, I love you and I want to do this for you tonight, and I will be able to serve you better this week if I can have a night playing video games. The gift of my boy saying that to me, my heart lights up because if somebody gives me a no, I actually trust their yes more.
Exactly. Amen, brother. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so that would be something to consider too for those of you who are on that part of the spectrum. Asking your partner, when will they say no? I think that is a gift to develop in them.
So, okay, I'm all the time summarizing what you're saying and making sure that
I
I
love it. I
understand
love
it.
it.
What you're saying is that this exploration of who you are and what you want will help you also to be very clear about your limits and your no's.
Right. And
Wonderful.
some people call them boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
but for me, and limits, but for me, I think of it like the paddock or the area that a horse can run free. It's where both of us, or the group of us, whatever your relationship is, has a chance to build somewhere where we can thrive.
Yeah.
It's not, this is a wall and you cannot pass it. It's, this is the shape of what we build, and it's how we will find success, find joy, find power between us. And for me, that is a helpful way to think of it rather than boundaries or walls.
Mm, I get that. Yeah. So let me summarize it again. What you're saying is um, whatever you find out, what is your what you want and what you don't want is actually giving you the freedom to tell your partner where is the space to play,
Yeah.
and until where, and within that space there is plenty of space, and so
Oh,
you're actually
so much
talking about
space.
what is possible instead of what is not.
Exactly. And that there are moments I've had, like I think of my former girl, um, that when she told me this is a place that you can absolutely play with me, I realized, oh, I thought that wasn't an area we could go because other submissives say, oh, we can't do this. This is not. And I, as a dominant, went, oh, I was making the assumption that that's not what we could do because I was assuming
Yeah.
what her submission looked like.
Well, I don't think it's a bad thing to assume something in that sense.
Oh,
It's better than assuming that
no.
you can, and instead of the other way around. Like another educator once said, he said, what he said is that in principle, I will always assume that it's a no-go until we have discussed it, which I think is a very great idea. And it's,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
also something that I found out in our relationship, that as sometimes you don't know what your boundaries are simply because you just didn't think about it. Very simple.
Right.
Because there is so much. So you'll figure it out later. And by the way, also boundaries change. There's stuff that
Yes.
I would have loved to do a few years ago that I'm really not into anymore. And the other way around too.
Right. Yeah, I do a
Stuff that I
3-day.
thought that I wouldn't be into, and then
Right.
I found out like, okay, maybe it is interesting just because I had assumptions about it. So assumptions
Yeah, I do
checking is
a
anyway
3.
good. Yeah.
Right.
But
Right.
that's
I
the
do a
power of your
3-day.
book, is actually that you're not just checking the assumptions that you're making about others, but you're checking the assumptions that you're making yourself. And that's a very
Exactly.
powerful thing, because there's things that you believe about yourself also. If I give you the example of, for me, was everything that has to do with golden showers and everything was for me was a really a no-go. That's something you don't do.
Right.
Only when I found out the intimacy about it, it was very carefully introduced, and and then I realized how connecting it can be. Only then I realized that this was, for me, was an assumption that I never dared to check.
Right. Yeah, so I do a 3-day intensive called Delving into Power.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of what it is. It's looking at what are the things and what are the core things in our dominance, our submission, our leadership, our following. And for example, what you're looking for, we look at the whys, and that what you're looking for is intimacy. That's
Exactly.
your core.
Yeah.
If you set aside all the activities,
Yeah.
that is your core.
Yeah.
And in which case, the activities, whether it's bondage, whether it's water sports, whether it's getting somebody a glass of water, it's how do we make it intimate?
Right.
Instead of saying, oh, I'm not into water sports anymore, we have to set aside this full emotion.
Yeah.
It's finding then something else to fill in the emotion.
Yeah.
And for me as a service person, one of my cores is the idea that I have value and meaning. That is my core. I want to
For you,
know
the
that
core value. Yeah.
right, that's the core values. I want to know that I am useful. I want to know that I will be remembered.
Yeah.
And so when people do the thing of like bringing a glass of water and then I'm supposed to stand on the side and nobody notices me, that's not good for my brain. What's good for my brain is, even if it's for a moment, my partner turning to me, half nodding, and then going back to their conversation.
So
Because right, in
exactly.
that moment, I matter.
Yeah, wonderful.
That's the core. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool, because for me, one of my core values is challenge. So for me, in a lot of things that I do, it's important that I found that I get challenged in some way. I need to have the opportunity to grow, which is very challenging for me, because my Dom loves to find then things that he knows is making me grow, but I don't. So there comes a trust in it. That's a challenge too. That's the type of play that I love. But it makes it a lot more interesting if I know this, and because I was aware of these core values, it made it for him possible on finding out what type of assignments he should make, how our relationship was going to be shaped. So it's a fantastic example, actually. What you're saying is how you look into yourself, find out who you really are, what's important for you, and then bring that your whole self into a relationship.
Mhm. Yeah, beautifully said.
Thank you. So, for whom did you write the book?
I think I wrote it for my mother, who is since deceased.
Why?
She never got to read it. After her divorce from my father, she cut herself off in a lot of ways. Yes, she dated an amazing woman for a short period of time, and I think she hooked up from time to time. But I don't know if she ever really got a chance to ask the question, who am I? Yes, she took herself out on dates, and it's where I got some of the idea for those exercises in the book. But I would have loved to have her get to be a pen pal for herself and then listen to what she had to say to her.
To enjoy
I,
her company.
yeah, like I would have loved her to get to do that. I would have loved for her to be able to ask the question, what activities actually bring me joy? And some she knew, but I think she could have gone deeper. And and so there is a joy in that for me, the idea, not that she didn't get to do it, that's not a sorrow for me. I'm not sad about the fact, but there's an inspiration for me that that I get to live on a deeper level than my mother ever got to. And as a note, my mother was a corset fetishist and a spanko, and like she was very, very kinky. I've got kink in my family going back at least 4 generations.
Okay.
So so yeah, my great says grandmother, yeah, great grandmother was a fetish model back in the 1920s and 30s. So so I've got that. But like I think when you ask who was it for, originally like it's for my mother, but then also once I started pieces out there of blog entries or entries on my Patreon, I kept on having people say, "Go deeper, I want more. Where's the rest of the book?" And so it shifted into the hunger of people who were following, gifting me the chance to follow my work. And so that became part two.
So how would you describe, so how would you say, who should read your book?
There's a lot of self-help books out there in the world, and I honor that. For me, it was people who are busy because it's a very small book. It's a very
I
thin
saw
book,
it. It's
right?
very small compared to the other ones.
Yeah,
It's very small.
right. Because I wanted somebody to be able, who was busy, to be able to pick up a chapter, do the exercise in there, and then be able to take a break for a little while because you got 3 kids, you're working 2 jobs, whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
So people who are looking for access to this information without having to commit to a 300-page book. So that was part two was making sure that it's accessible to, by not having a pink cover and lots of swirls and references to spas that you can't afford. Um, because I've got exercises in it about what would it be like to put on the music you love and blast it at full volume when you're going from your job site doing construction to picking up your kid at the soccer match, right? And making it accessible to, so part of it is people who don't have a lot of time, people of diverse gender experiences, rather than a lot of the books being written from a women's only experience, middle class women's only experience specifically. Um, and I'd say people who want to do, who don't want to feel alone when they're doing this work,
Hmm.
that you do it while you're in relationship. And relationship could be your romantic or live-in partner, your co-parent, but relationship could also be your friends. That as you get new things that come up, you can say, "Hey, I wrote this thing. Can I talk to you about it?" People who want to have connection when you're doing this stuff, including connection with you.
Cool. That's nice. How did it change you writing the book?
Oh, so there's a chapter that I sat on for, like, I wrote the book essay, like the outline, probably 8 years ago, right? Like I had this idea and I wrote the entry and like the first two chapters, 7 or 8 years ago. And there is a chapter in it that I don't even remember what I call it nowadays, but it's how do you forgive yourself when you've done things that aren't good for you?
Powerful question.
And I sat on that chapter because I didn't want to ask me that question. I was like, oh, that's a big question. And I would pick it up. I'd look at the question and be like,
yeah, next week.
next week,
Next week I'll write
next
that
month,
chapter. Yeah.
next month I'll do it. Next month I'll do it.
Yeah.
And finally asking myself that question and coming up with some answers and ideas that I can share. And then also like less stressful questions that people could build up to that one.
Mhm.
Doing that work for myself, I think, was something that really changed how I relate those moments that are imperfect in my life.
Cool.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would like to share about the book that we didn't touch or?
Whether it's with this book or doing the work on your video series, I think with all of it, the thing that matters to me and the thing I would like to share is to be gentle with you. And if what you need to do is watch your video series and you watch a thing and you're like, oh my God, I need to do that next month. Or if you're game to pick up this book and do some of the simple exercises that are simple to you, or some of the ones that feel complex and challenging to you, and it's to you, not some other random person. Because this is your journey. That's the thing I would like to offer is have gentleness to you because your journey around this stuff is one of a kind. And to know that about yourself. And I think that's the thing I would like people to know about the book is gentleness and to know you are a beautiful, power, unique individual. So give yourself space to do you.
Ah, that's cool. Yeah. I do have something to add there though.
Please.
Maybe because of my core value is challenge. But what I discovered in life is that if something is hard and you feel resistance, that's the place to grow. So if you really want to get somewhere and you want to make a jump in your life, you want to expand, that's where you'll have to go one day or another. I mean, it doesn't have to be today.
Yes.
It's as long as you're aware of that this is waiting for you and this will get you somewhere.
Exactly. And I think it's for me, the hybrid of those knowledges to say, I want to push it, I want to grow it, and then to look at where I'm at today.
Yeah,
Is this the moment? And
exactly.
sometimes the answer is absolutely.
Yeah, and
This
it
is
might be that you
moment.
say like, no, I want to do that one day, but not now. There's
Right.
there's one person in my life I need to deal with that for a long time, and it's a very important person. It's very close, which makes it really hard, and I'm simply not ready for it. So I'm just accepting the fact and also being gentle. I really like that expression, being gentle. That it's okay. That I don't need to push myself. There will be a time, and I will know it when it's right.
Exactly.
Being gentle is
Exactly.
the best. And for the rest, people should read the book. Just pick whatever and at least buy it put it in your closet, so at least you have it by hand by the moment that you're ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to do with you one of the exercises of the book, if that's okay with you.
I would
So,
love that.
yeah, and I will be your guinea pig for that. And yeah, let's do it. Now that was, I hope that made a little bit more clear about what the book is about. And I would love to give you the opportunity actually to show to the people who are watching this video on what kind of exercises there are in. And I would love to give them some value also so they can already do this exercise. Now, Lee asked me to bring a pen and paper. So if you would like to do the exercise with me, then just pause the video and get your ass out of your chair and get some paper and a pen.
Though I would also offer that if you are somebody who is dyslexic or blind, or where writing down isn't good for you, go and grab yourself something you can audio record with, like an iPhone or whatever you use for doing so that you can still participate.
Wonderful. Great addition. Okay. I'm curious and a bit nervous. You're not going to make me cry, are you?
Well, let's find out. So this exercise is about labels, which we were talking about in the video earlier. We were talking about this idea that some people give you labels that you didn't ask for. They're not all bad, but they're labels that somebody else gave you. And other ones are labels that you dreamed up for yourself, that are labels that you went, this actually feels really good to me. So this is based off that concept. So if you didn't watch that earlier, please go back, because that's what I explain in the chapter here, as well as we did earlier in this video. All right, you ready to go?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I want you to write down whatever your answers are. So there's no requirement limit. You might write 1, you might write 8. All right, you ready?
Yes.
All right. The first question is, what are labels you identify as or with? For example, you might think about, I am a submissive, I am a blank, right? What are some of your I ams? Give you a little space there. There are no right answers. All right. Finish that up if your last one or two.
Yeah.
All right. Next question is, what are 4 labels others have assigned me? Such as, others say I am blank. Or people have said to you, you are a blank. Go ahead and write some of those down. Knowing that some people might have, emotions about this. For other people, it's just a technical question. All right, you ready for the next one? Looks like you are. All right. What are 8, or I not ignore the word 8, what are positive traits you believe you have? For example, I am loving, or I am dominant. What are 8 positive traits? Ignore the word 8. Sorry about that. I keep reading it. What are some positive traits?
It's not hard for me to put in 8 positive words.
Fair enough.
Very
For people at
optimistic.
home,
I'll put that down. I'm very
I love
modest
it.
also.
Yeah. Well, it happens to be 8 in the book because I want to challenge people to kind of pull some of them out for yourself, because some people might only have 1 or 2 answers, and you might have to skip a certain question. It's okay to skip a question and then come back later. There is nothing wrong with that. Go ahead and look up when it feels good for you, that you've got a few to go with.
I've got 8 and I'll stop.
All right, there you go.
20. No worries.
What are some positive traits other people have said about you? That they have said to you, you're really loving, or I love that you blank, even if they're not things you believe in you. For some people, they cross over, but for a lot of us, it's like, really? You think I am?
I'm gonna write it in Dutch because I don't know what it is in the English.
No, that's even better. Writing it in your original language, or the languages you know, so important. There are words that don't translate.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
All right, next one. What are a few labels that are private to you that you don't tell everyone? You might tell it to one or two people, but what are some things you don't put on your biography? You wouldn't say out loud in a resume. You don't tell everyone when you meet them.
Positive
What are,
ones?
please, what?
Positive ones or
Um,
negative? Or
doesn't matter.
doesn't matter.
Things that you don't say to other
I
people.
tend to tell everyone everything.
That's fine. And that's a valid answer. A big old question mark or a big smiley face, both totally valid answers to this,
Yeah, but
right?
it's good to think about it because that might be the easier answer. So what I know with this type of exercises, if that we tend as people, we tend to as soon as it gets hard, we tend to get over it and go to the next one. And I would actually challenge people to do take the time and dive into it because
Exactly.
there will be a few.
Right. That's why in the book it has specific numbers in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You need to get at least this many on there. And in our community and for people who are watching, the answer might be I am submissive.
Yeah.
I haven't told anyone else that this is your sacred thing in your heart and you're not ready, or it is precious to you and it doesn't belong to anyone.
I have one
Right.
too. I have one too that's also.
Next one. What are traits you want yourself to improve on?
Ooh.
One of mine is I want to be more patient.
Yeah, for me, it's being kind to myself. Having
Ooh,
such high expectations of myself, and sometimes it's okay.
right. And last one. What are some actions you can begin to do today to support those improvements? Look at that list you just wrote.
Mm.
Choose one. What is something you can do today? And when you're ready, we're going to go back and look at the answers you did. Just so that people at home get an idea of where you and I have come up with some ideas and to see that we're a little vulnerable too.
And after that, I will
Sound
share
okay?
what it will be, what it's like to do this exercise because yeah, loved it. Thank you.
Would you be game to do that follow up of getting people to be able
Absolutely.
to see a couple of our answers?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, because the first question was I am.
Yeah. So I'm a mother. I think that's for me is my biggest thing. I'm a trainer. I'm a kink educator. I'm a single mom.
Mm,
I'm a lover. I'm a submissive. I'm a daughter. And I'm an athlete. Those were the ones that I came up with so far.
that's
And what
beautiful.
happens when I write those down is that it makes me feel proud of myself, and it makes me also feel very multifaceted. And I
Mm-hmm.
really like that about myself. So I think already for that, that's a wonderful exercise to do that.
Yeah, for me, mine ended up being a kind of a blend of kinds of answers. For me, it was I am a spirit worker, which is a term I use rather than shaman because there's a lot of complexity in that term and doesn't feel good to me as a non-Sami person. But I'm a spirit worker, that I am uh, a poet, and I am a person who connects to others lovingly. But I also wrote down on my list kind, right? Because it was an emotion or a concept. Not all of mine were actions or things or labels in those ways, right? One of my labels was kind. So kind of, I just thought I'd share that there it
Yeah.
was a mix.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and that's great to share those because it also gives examples. But I would really recommend to the people who are watching this, make this list before you listen to us. And
Mm-hmm.
again, if you find out, oh, that's a label that makes me think about something, because you were saying kind, I was saying like, I wouldn't say kind so much for myself as a label, but I know that that sweet is one that I have for myself. That would be one
Mm,
that I would add. So
right,
there's always space to add more labels to your list.
right. And then on the flip side, things that people have said about you.
Yeah, there's one that really popped up with me, and that's they call me Auntie Paprika. It's not meant as a nice thing. And it comes from my brother-in-law, and he and there is a kind of a sneer in it, something not so nice.
Right,
It feels, for me, it feels not so compliments as a compliment, but it just means that I'm very thin
right. Yeah, and it's
and I'm living
interesting.
healthy.
Oh, please. Yeah. Yeah, for me, I've been called some homophobic slurs, and I'm not going to list those words out loud. Um, but I've been called them in a negative sense. And I actually took the time to reclaim some of them and be like, yeah, people are going to call me that. I'm just going to use it as a term of love and affection. And that gets done in the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
That gets done in the Black community in the United States. These words of hate, they can get reworked. And then on the positive side, I've also had people tell me that I was loving to everyone. And I'm like, wow, intellectually, I might see that, but because I experienced love on so many ways, but I don't think I'm loving to everyone. There's people that I have a lot of strong negative responses to, but it
Mm.
was interesting that some people had that perception of me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So,
I had two other words that now one that would pop up for me is selfish. People call me selfish. Um, and that's something that I don't really connect with, but I do realize that it influences my what I'm doing, because I'm afraid of being called that. So that's why I'm careful with how I do stuff, and it also sometimes prevents me to choose for me, because I don't want to be called that. So that's actually was a very interesting insight for me. And another one that I had was some people called me an athlete, and I also always I struggled a lot with it to identify with it, and that's lately I'm starting to feel it like, okay, I can relate to that, so that's nice. Yeah.
well, I think that's a really fun thing for people to consider is that some of the things that people call us are inspirational. They're not necessarily things we feel today,
Exactly.
and they're not negative,
Yeah.
but they're the idea of, well, if somebody believes that about me, especially if I believe in them,
Exactly.
maybe this is a place where I could be inspired, where I can find possibility, where I could find joy.
Exactly.
And so for me in dominance and submission, having someone say to me, you are such a good boy,
Mm-hmm.
even if I don't believe that in that moment, the fact that my daddy said to me, I'm a good boy, that moment might be a point of inspiration to go, if they believe in me, instead of arguing with my daddy,
Yeah.
to be inspired and say, okay, if my daddy believes that in me, maybe it's time for me to check myself and go, if somebody else believes in me, maybe in this moment I am good and I can listen to them.
Yeah, and it's fantastic to do the truth process that I just described. It's fantastic to do that on that. Is it true? And if so,
Right.
why? And what is a very interesting question is, if you don't believe it's true, what would happen if you believe that it's true? That's very nice. And then, yeah, well, there's more ways. I should make a video about that. That would be nice. But that's very interesting to do some research in that perspective. Really cool. I like the good girls. For me, is the same.
Well,
Yeah,
and what I would offer to folks, because there's a whole lot of questions that we went through, but consider what you and I just did of looking at these questions that we did of the first two or the first three and go, okay, what do I feel about this? Looking back on the list you wrote down,
exactly.
what do I feel about it? Do I agree with myself? If there
Ex-
are things other people said, why do I believe in it or not? And is there harm if my partner said something to me? Do I need to correct them? Or is it a chance to be like, huh, that's what they think right now? If it's things that are private and personal, is it private and personal now? Is it something you might want to share with one person at some point?
Mm,
Do you feel like that feels good to you? Or is it sacred and precious for no one else to know? And if it's action steps,
yeah.
what do you want to do today to take whatever that action step is to have the courage to try that out today? So that's an exercise out of the book. And I hope it's useful for folks who are watching right now to try this out, to ask yourself some of these questions, to explore and to look back on them.
Yeah, I would like to do a look into the last two questions because I think it's
Yeah.
to share and to see. I'm just going to share one thing that I said that you asked what would be two traits that you would like to improve on.
Yeah.
The trait, and I have two, and I'm giving one. The one of them is that I said being kind to yourself. It's the fun thing is what I notice with myself is that there's also a lot of belief in me that this is something that I
Mm.
cannot change. This is how I am. I'm not a good listener. It's because I'm so creative and all over the place and I have so many good traits, but that means that I can't help it. And that makes you powerless in a way. And then your last question that you said is, what action can I do today? That's puts you in your power. And
Yeah.
that's making you responsible and you can change it. And that's what happened. So what I did is I took the being kind to myself. And instead of thinking, it's something that I can't change, it took me a bit of time. But
Right.
what I decided to do is what I'm going to do is just every night be grateful and look at what I did do today instead of what I didn't do today, which is my modus operandi. So that's just an example of how you can do that. And listen, I would love to hear your example of this. So if you would be willing to share that
Absolutely.
in the comments, we would both be very excited and thrilled to read all of those. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Lee. Wonderful.
Yeah.
What was yours? Would you like to
Mine
share yours?
is, yeah, mine is I don't follow through.
I don't know what that means. Can you put it in other words?
Yes, happily. Um, I start a few examples. I
Right.
start a
Okay.
project and don't finish it,
Okay.
or I tell my partner I'm going to physically top them. And then for 2 or 3 nights in a row, I don't do it. I don't do it. I don't do it. Right. I don't follow through on what I say I'm going to do.
Clear, thank you.
And so one thing I can do tonight is follow through on something.
Yeah.
Just
And then
one
you
thing.
write
Let it
down
be
for
little.
yourself what it is, right? I mean, you make it concrete.
Exactly.
I
And
can
so it
totally
could
understand you're
be
not sure, but
right. It could be asking someone, can I get you a glass of water? And then I actually go to the kitchen, bring the glass of water back instead of taking 17 steps. But
Lee,
the
are you telling me that there are times that you actually promise someone to bring them a glass of water and you don't follow up?
Oh, absolutely.
Over.
And the reason why is that, and this is something that gets sometimes referred to as neurodivergent or
Yeah, just being
neurospicy or
distracted by,
autism
yeah.
spectrum. Yeah, is that I'll get to the kitchen and I'll go
What
and
am I
I'll go
doing
get
here?
right. No, I'll get to the kitchen
Oh,
and I'll get an ice cube. I'll put it in the glass and then I'll look at the freezer and be like, oh, this needs to be rearranged. And then I start rearranging things.
yeah,
And then I go, oh, shoot, we need to be able to use up this tofu before it goes
exactly. Yeah.
bad. And so
And
I'll get a post-it note and write the recipe down.
I totally get you. It's called focus deficit disorder.
Right.
It's not on the
And there's
spectrum, but it does exist.
exactly, there's lots of ways to look at it,
Yeah.
right? I know people who use different words. None of them are better or worse than each other. What matters is how do I develop a life where I can find joy and I can follow through for myself and others. And so tonight, I am making a commitment that I will do something small where I follow through on the thing I said I would do today.
Exactly.
One little thing.
And just for the record, people who are watching, he's not going to say that now, but if you're going to write that down, you're not going to say, I'm going to do one thing. You're going to make it very practical and very concrete. And this is what you're going to do. Because otherwise,
Yep.
you're not going to do, I tell you.
No, that's
From
exactly it.
experience.
Actually do it tonight.
Yeah. But make
Or
it
this
make
afternoon.
it concrete. Make it concrete.
Make the
Because otherwise
exactly
you
make the
still
action concrete.
you will take too much time thinking about what you're gonna do.
No, that's exactly. And my action is I will do one thing. Right? Ideally, I would list what that thing is.
Exactly.
Ideally, I would say, I am going to go right now, get myself a glass of water and drink it.
Yeah.
Right? That's the action step. In fact, let's have that be for me. I am going to leave this computer. I am going to go upstairs to the kitchen. I am going to get myself a glass of water and drink it.
Brilliant.
It is 4 steps, and I am going to go do it right now.
Okay, go.
All right. I love you all. It has been an absolute delight. You can find me online at passionandsoul.com. That same word, passion and soul. You can find me on most social media. And it has been an absolute, yes, absolutely. It's also down below. And thank you so much for having me on today. It's been an absolute delight.
I loved it. It was wonderful. It was my pleasure. I mean, let's stay in touch and keep in touch and whatever. I'm going to say good night to everyone here. Good night. Thank you so much, or good evening, or good morning. I don't know when you are watching this, but I hope you enjoyed it, and we talk later.